So good morning, everyone. My name is Brianna Yoakum, and I'm currently the accreditation coordinator and assistant of professional development here at Washington Alliance for Quality Recovery Residences. So glad you guys could join us today for our topic on the peer counseling in Washington State. Just a little housekeeping things. We have a lot of people registered today for this training. And so if we can use the raised hands feature or utilize the chat box, I'm going to try my best to get all questions answered for you guys. So yeah, and we're joined today by Stephanie Lane. Stephanie is the Chief Workforce Development Officer for Peer Washington. She's also worked as the Director of the WSU Peer Workforce Alliance. Stephanie has been in the field for 18 years and has assisted in contributing to the actual writing of the standard CPC manual, and her team wrote and piloted the bridge training. She is a CPC trainer and most recently has brought this training to the Lemni Nation, Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, and she's even developed peer support training for first responders. She is a peer and she believes in the motto that nothing about us without us. So thank you so again, Stephanie, for putting this on today for us. We're really looking forward to what you have to say.
Good morning. Is that your housekeeping? Yes. Am I on? Is this thing
yes.
on? Okay.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Awesome. Good morning, everybody. How is everybody? Good to see you. Good to see some familiar faces. Boy, when she said that there was going to be over 100 people here, she was not kidding. I am really excited to be here. My name is Stephanie Lane, and I am the Chief Workforce Development Officer for Peer Washington. One of my hobbies, passions is peer support because I'm also a peer. When I was about 12 years old, had some severe challenges, some traumas, and those traumas resulted in behaviors that got me labeled as having a behavioral problem, and I really had a medical problem, right? I was labeled as a bad kid. I got kicked out of the entire Kent school district when I was 12, and I didn't really get into full recovery again until I was full recovery until I was about 25 years old. I've experienced suicidality, homelessness, pretty much everything you can think of, and what I know, like I know nothing else, is that peer support works. Peer support can work when other modalities and interventions don't work. And there's lots of different ways and models of peer support. So how I like to do this training is I'm going to put a PowerPoint up, and you guys are welcome to ask questions as you go. Once I put the PowerPoint up, I'm not going to be able to see you guys very well. And so Brianna is going to call on hands, and I might take the PowerPoint down and put it back up again. And we might go to another website just so I can show you where to go if I get any questions in that direction. Let me start the PowerPoint. Let me share my screen. Here we go. All right. Can you guys see that? Yep. Thank you for the thumbs up. I see that. I appreciate it. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to let me get this bar out of the way, get it up here. We're going to talk about Behavioral Health Peer Support 101. And when we talk about behavioral health, we're talking about substance use disorder and mental health challenges. We also include traumatic brain injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder. There's really peer support for anything. If you have lived experience in a certain area, you can provide peer support in that area. So today we're talking about behavioral health peer support. We're going to talk a little bit about substance use disorder peer services. We're going to talk about roles and definitions. And then if there's any organizations that are out there that are interested in starting peer support programs, we have a program called Operationalizing Peer Support. And we help agencies get their behavioral health agency license, figure out what type of peer support program they want, and then we help them implement it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the application process. And so, Brianna, if you could also watch the chat in case there's any.
Yeah, we'll do, Stephanie.
Okay. Okay, so the Healthcare Authority's Peer Support Program trains and qualifies behavioral health consumers or peers to be certified peer counselors. Now, there's a difference between certified peer counselors, recovery coaches, community health workers. The basic difference between a certified peer counselor and a recovery coach, you may or may not know what a recovery coach is. That is a different training. It's a 5-day training specifically focused on substance use disorder, anybody who's been affected by it. So if you're a family member and you don't personally have substance use disorder in your background, you can still take the training, even if you've been affected in the community by it. That training, the Recovery Coach Academy training, is for everybody, including allies. The certified peer counseling training is only for people who have very specific lived experience in mental health or substance use challenges. And one of the main differences between a recovery coach and a certified peer counselor is that a certified peer counselor can bill Medicaid and a recovery coach at this time cannot. And what that means in general is that if you can bill Medicaid, you can sustain your program. It becomes an income generating peer support program, and you don't have to go and grab grants for it. Let's see here. Next slide. Okay. So what's unique about behavioral health peers? The power is in our story, right? We've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. We connect because we have something that counselors don't have. We have hope, and mutuality. In peer support, in true peer support, each person who's engaged in that relationship, even though there is still a power dynamic, you get something out of it. The people who provide the peer support are getting just as much out of that as the people who are receiving it. It's called mutuality, and it's a core value in peer support. The power is in our stories, right? And we're taught to use our stories very specifically and sparingly, but effectively. And so as a certified peer counselor, I use my story like seasoning, and the person that I'm working with, their story is the meat and potatoes, right? Like it's never about me. I'm only going to use my story when it's going to be most effective and impactful to the person that I'm working with. Our self-disclosure is all around hope and inspiration. We use our lived experience to create connections. I don't know if you've ever seen the video, Everything You Know About Addiction is Wrong. It's a TED Talk. And I think it's Jan Bjorn. But he talks about connection and how we're treating people with mental health challenges and substance use disorder challenges is cutting them off from connection. And we have to start doing the opposite. And he presents some data and things like that. So it's a really great video if you haven't seen it. We actively promote principles of recovery and resiliency. And we work really diligently to actively reduce stigma in the community and the systems and in ourselves. A lot of people who become certified peer counselors have a little bit of learned helplessness or some internalized messages. And we want to make sure during the training that the people that we're putting into the field are healthy, they understand where they're healed and where they might still have some soft spots in their story that they might not want to utilize in their work. Okay, so peer support certification classes started in 2005. Initially, we averaged about 6 to 9 trainings per year. We even had them in Spanish, and we're looking forward to getting some Spanish speaking trainings up and running. Washington was one of the first 11 states to begin peer services. Clearly, we were the 11th. Otherwise, we would say top 10. We must have been the 11th. Initially, only mental health peer services were in the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services contract. That's the federal. But as of July 1st, 2019, substance use disorder peers were added to the state plan amendment, and we'll take a peek at that. I have created a resource list for you guys, and Brianna will send that out to everybody after this training so that you guys can have the links that I'll be showing you. The Healthcare Authority and the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery are the agencies that run the peer support program, and their team has expanded. There used to be one person in the peer support team at the Healthcare Authority back in 2005, Bonnie Staples, who's retired, and now I think they have 10 or 14. Like it has really expanded, and just like peer support has expanded. And we have a conference that we put on every year. It's called the Peer Pathways Conference, where peers aren't right now. There's no RCW or WAC that says how many hours of supervision certified peer counselors need. And there's nothing that says that determines how much continuing education peer supporters need. And so we created this conference so that people could get together and network with each other and get as much continuing education as they possibly can in 2 days. It's usually in August, and the information about that conference should be coming out pretty soon. There's an updated application process and a new database. Currently, there are 1,300 people on the waiting list to become a certified peer counselor. Now they're working really hard. Where in the beginning, there were 6 to 9 CPC trainings a year. Now it's not uncommon to have that many trainings a month. We are really trying to train people. And I'll go through the application process for you guys so that you can see what that looks like. But there are different types of peer support. Any questions so far on what I've said? Any hands up? Okay, great. Thank you. So we have mental health certified peer counselors. So these are the behavioral health certified peer counselors. These are the formal CPCs, and these are the ones working in a Medicaid reimbursable agency. They use their lived experience as a consumer, or parents and youth or youth in transition can also be certified peer counselors. There's an application and an approval process. Then you do an online training and a 40-hour in-person training, and then you take a written exam that has 50 questions in it, and there's also a verbal exam. Now, once you take the 5-day training and pass the exam, you become credentialed as a certified peer counselor. You're not licensed yet. The only way you can become licensed is if you get an offer of a job or volunteer opportunity or an internship through a behavioral health agency, and then fill out the affiliated agency application. Then you become licensed once the Department of Health gives you that license. So a formal certified peer counselor that works in a behavioral health agency is going to be part of a clinical team, and peer services are going to be connected to a treatment goal. So somebody's going to come in, say that they want services, they're going to get an assessment, they're going to get a goal plan, and then if it's determined a medical necessity for peer support through the assessment, then peer support specialists will be assigned to that individual. Now, you can have up to 4 hours of peer support a day, as long as it's determined that it's medically necessary. Again, all the peer services are going to be connected to a treatment goal. So if somebody comes in and gets approved for services for housing, but they want to start talking with their peer support specialist about employment, that peer support support specialist is going to go back to the team. They're going to say, we want to add a goal to the plan. It's going to be employment. And then they're going to write their notes towards those goals. But a certified peer counselor is not going to work on any goals that aren't specifically related to the reason why the individual was approved for services in the first place. Another difference between licensed and unlicensed certified peer counselors is that if you are billing Medicaid, you are automatically a mandated reporter. And so the difference between a recovery coach and a certified peer counselor also happen. You can see that pretty glaringly in engagement, because a certified peer counselor is going to say, you know, I'm not your friend, but I can help you find friends. I'm not your mom. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a bank, right? You're going to set all those boundaries, but you're also going to say, and as a part of my job, I'm a mandated reporter, and this is what that means, right? So if they suspect any abuse or if they see signs of abuse, they have to report it to adult services or children's services. But a recovery coach doesn't have that requirement. And the oversight for the certified peer counseling program overall is the Division of Behavioral Health and Recovery, which sits under the Healthcare Authority. And then the Department of Health is in charge of the licensing piece. We recommend continuing education, and there's lots of different types of continuing education that can be had. Motivational interviewing is really good for certified peer counselors. RAP, which is Mary Ellen Copeland's wellness recovery action plan, ethics and boundaries, anything on trauma-informed care or post-traumatic growth. Those are all fantastic trainings for certified peer counselors after they get into the field. So there's also community peers. These are like the agency that I work for. They do not, so Peer Washington has sites all over Washington. We have Peer Spokane, Peer Olympia, Peer Kent, Peer Seattle. We're working on new sites all the time. And we don't bill Medicaid at all. We don't have to do Medicaid notes. We don't, but it's still very effective. And so we use coaches. We use peer coaches, and I can talk to you a little bit more about that after the presentation if you're interested in our model. But you still have to have lived experience in mental health or substance use disorder or trauma, or you have to be a parent or a parent of a child who's receiving services. The services are always going to be based on the organization's mission, and the relationship is based on the availability of peers and agency funding. A lot of times this community peers get funded through sometimes foundational community supports. I don't know if anybody's aware of that, but foundational community supports reimburses for supported employment, supported housing, and a little bit of supported education. And if you have a question about that, that's through a MERA group, which is a managed care organization. A lot of times these programs get funded through grants. You could go to United Way, you could go to anywhere you want. We got some of our certified peer counseling training paid for veterans through the state, through legislation. It just became a line item in the state budget. There's lots of really creative ways that you can pay for this. So if you're like a little hesitant of like, oh, that Medicaid stuff is just, it's so complicated, we don't really want to get into that, but we still want a peer support program, don't worry, you can have it. There's lots of ways to fund these programs. Documentation is minimal, and it's determined by the organization and funding requirements. You still have to take the training, you're still going to take the test. And the background checks in this, so if you are an affiliated, so if you get a license through the Department of Health and you're in a formal behavioral health agency, the background check is going to be mandatory. And if you have any court involvement, you're going to have to get sealed records of any cases that you have, and you're going to have to send them right to the Department of Health. And then they'll go through all that documentation. The cool thing about licensure for certified peer counseling, which is this one right here, This is the more formal, is that it used to be you couldn't have a felony for the last 7 years. Then we changed it. They changed it to 5 years, and now it's only 1 year. So if you have a felony, or if you know somebody who wants to be a certified peer counselor and has a felony, and that felony is related to their lived experience, their mental health challenges, or their substance use challenges, then they are eligible to be employed in the peer support world, which is really, really great news for criminal justice involved folks. So again, you have the community peer support background checks here, and this type of peer support really depend on the agency, the organization, and the policy, specifically what type of funding you're. And then there's minimal oversight required. So in the more formal support here, a certified peer counselor needs to be supervised by a mental health professional or a substance use disorder professional. With community, they can be supervised by anybody. They can be supervised by another peer. They can be supervised by anybody. And so as a recovery coach, you're going to either work or volunteer in your community. A lot of tribes use recovery coaches. You just have to have personal experience and have been and consider yourself affected by substance use disorder. There's a training. It's called the Recovery Coach Training. I don't know if you can see that because I'm on Blur, but that's the manual, and it's a 5-day training. And we talk about everything from how people are treated in the system to we really dive into stages of change and do a lot of, and I'm going to show you a CPC manual a little bit later if you guys want to see it. But this is more substance use disorder related, and you can't bill Medicaid. So here are some requirements to become a CPC. You have to identify as a person with lived experience with mental health or substance use services, or be a parent or legal guardian of a child with the same. You have to be 18 years or older. You have to self-identify as being in mental health recovery or substance use recovery for at least a year. Now, this could also be trauma, could also be traumatic brain injury. Like I don't want us to get too hung up on the behavioral health piece of this, but that's mostly where peer support is utilized, is in the behavioral health field right now in our world. You are in recovery when you say you are. We're not talking about 12-step abstinence. If you do use harm reduction, if you are on MAT, which is medically assisted treatment, you're in recovery when you say you are. And so it's a very self-determined program, and the application is where you're going to say what type of recovery you're in and how long you've been in recovery. You need to be able to demonstrate some qualities of leadership, which basically they will look on the application to see, where have you shared your story before? Or do you belong to any groups? Have you facilitated any groups? Because the number one requirement to become a certified peer counselor is to be able to share your story. And if you're not quite there yet, then that's probably not a great fit for you at this time. You need to demonstrate proficiency in reading and comprehension. The application does ask you if you've graduated high school. I want you to know that that's not a deal breaker. And if you haven't graduated high school, you just write a little blurb and let them know why. And there's a lot of people that are certified peer counselors that have not graduated high school. They're very good at their job. Be willing to share your personal story of recovery, right? So you're going to, here's the application. So if you go to hca.wa.gov, there you go. Can you see that? Did that switch? Or are you still on the PowerPoint?
I'm still seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay, I'm going to stop share real quick and I'm going to go back to share screen. That's the thing about Zoom. It doesn't travel with me very well. Can you see the website now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So this is, and I'm going to cut and paste this and put it in the chat.
I have, yeah, see if that works. If that doesn't, then I have the whole handout sheet I can post in there as well for them to follow along if they like.
Okay, there you go. Okay, great. So this is the Healthcare Authority peer support website, and it has everything you could think of on here. So a consumer, they talk about a consumer is also a peer. It's someone who's eligible or to receive mental health or substance use disorder services. There's resources. There's a fact sheet. I'm going to show you the fact sheet in a second, but I want to show you the application, and I'm not sure if this is going to travel with me. Can you see the application or do you still see the website?
You see the application now.
Yes, excellent. So this is the application that people have to fill out. And so you must self-identify as a person with lived experience. You must demonstrate reading and writing, and you must be over 18. You're going to complete the application, and they ask you to do that with no assistance from other people. And then you're going to complete the online course. And then this is how they score the application. There's 5 priorities. You can be priority 1, priority 2, 3, 4, or 5. Priority 1 is somebody who is already working in the field or has a job offer. Priority 2 is going to be a veteran or somebody who has a volunteer. Priority 3 is somebody who isn't currently working in the field, but has a volunteer offer or is has worked in the field before. Priorities 4 and 5 are people that haven't worked in the field. They just want to become a certified peer counselor, and they don't have a job offer. They're not a veteran, so they get kind of moved down a little bit on the priority because of the desperate need for certified peer counselors in the field. And again, there's about 1,300 or more people on the waiting list right now to get this training. So they had to create that priority list. Now, yeah.
Oh, we just had a couple of questions here, and that kind of related to what you had to say. Emily asked, how would you get on the wait list to become a peer counselor? And then David wants to know if the application is in Spanish.
Oh, very good question. You can get any healthcare authority document in any language. It's a part of the law. It's a legal requirement for the healthcare authority to be able to offer this in other languages. I have not seen a Spanish application, but I'm writing this down, and I'm going to talk to the healthcare authority and ask them. Now, if I find a Spanish application, would you like me to send it to you? Or I could send it to Brianna and she could send it out to everybody.
Yeah, David said yes, please.
Okay, great. Great question. And then what was the first question?
Oh, she said you answered it already, but she was wondering how to get on the wait list to become a peer counselor, but you covered it.
Yes. So this is exactly how you fill out the application, you do the online training, and then what they do. So after you fill this out, right? Then they're going to send you a letter and let you know that you've been accepted and that you should just wait to be contacted by a training organization. It usually takes 1 to 2 months for a training organization to connect somebody who's been approved. And we're trying to shorten that. But at this time, with everything, during COVID, they had to move all of the trainings online. And so now we're starting to have some in person and some online, but there's still quite a wait. And the one way to get through that wait is if you have any funding. A training costs a full training of about 25 people generally cost about 1,500 per person. And that includes the exam. At the end, the exam is about $4,000. And but if there's an agency that has a group of people that they want to get trained, the priority list goes out the window because you're paying for the training. And then you would connect with me or Bradbury. So like you'd connect with Pierre Washington, um, or somebody who's approved to do the CPC trainings, connect with them, and then they would hold that training for you. And that's called a private training. And then you would just be able to get anybody that you wanted into that training.
Okay.
And, oh, go ahead.
We just have a couple more questions here.
Oh, bring them on. Thanks. I love it.
Yeah. So can you choose an in-person or online? Emily is wanting to know, is there options for?
You could, so if say, Community Voices Are Born, CVAB, is the agency that has the contract for the certified peer counseling trainings. And if they contact you and say, hey, we have this opening in a virtual training, but you want an in-person training, you can say, I'm going to give up that spot in virtual, but I prefer an in-person. And then you just have to wait for in person.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on how soon you want to be trained.
Okay. And then we have another question. How many courses will there be this year? Can the number of existing courses be increased? And then if you could repeat the amount that it costs again.
So we usually charge about $22,000 per training. That includes travel, food, trainers, the books, and the exam. But let me see how much that comes out to be per person. Who is making me do math right now? Who is that? Let's see.
That's me, Rocio. Hi, I'm from Northern ACH, and I'm very interested in learning more about how to support those potential peer counselors here in the area. So yeah, I want to know a budget. How much are we talking about?
Perfect. So for $22,000, if you had 25 people, that actually comes out to $880 per person. And that would cover the whole training and the exam. So the more people you have in the training, the less expensive it is per person. But general rule of thumb, it's about $22,000 per training. And that's only $880 per person for a 5-day full training that is one of the best workforce development trainings I've ever come across. Where can you just get out of jail, get out of a hospital, fill out an application, talk about your lived experience, and then be eligible for a $17 to $26 an hour job right out the gate. Full benefits, 401k, depending on where you work. And there are job openings. I was in a training yesterday where all we did for a portion of that training is we went through all of the different peer support jobs that are available, and there's several. Any other questions?
Yes. So Emily said, if I work for a housing nonprofit, running a youth diversion program where all of my clients have mental or behavioral health concerns, would that be considered working in the field? Would that be priority one?
Absolutely.
And then another question from Jackie is, when's the soonest there'll be another training in Washington?
So they're having them now. They're having them. So the people who are in trainings right now are the people that have waited for like 6 months to get into the trainings. Now they have them all the time. But what's going to determine when you get into a training is when you fill out this application that we're going through right now, right? So are you currently employed? Are you a volunteer? So if you hit yes here, then you're automatically, you get into, that's priority 3. If you're employed, but you're not in the field, you're priority 3. If you're employed and you're in the field, you're priority 1. If you're a veteran, you're priority 2, right? And here, I currently volunteer. I currently provide peer support. Want to say yes, maybe say no. And then you put your agency, the program position title, contact phone number. They generally aren't going to contact anybody. So a part of the application is briefly describe your current job duties. When you do this, they're really looking for what are you doing that either mimics or is peer support. Something that you do look like peer support? Do you provide support to people just like that last question? That would be a definite yes. How, so this training is intended to prepare you to work as a certified peer counselor. What are your goals? So you're going to want to have some employment goals. It could be as simple as I want to become a peer support specialist or a certified peer counselor. And then the other questions, why are you interested in becoming a certified peer counselor? And you have to fill out every one of these. You can't leave any of these blank because they have so many applications that if it's blank, I don't even know if they're reaching out to people again. But if you leave any part of this blank, it's going to be considered not filled out. And they're not going to consider it. And now the last question is, without sharing the details of your recovery story, explain how have you shared your personal mental health and or substance use recovery story to assist others. Include examples of your leadership qualities. So this is where they want to get a sense of, have you told your story? Do you feel comfortable enough with your recovery story yet? And then here's just the checklist. And then you submit it. It's super, super simple. I'm going to stop sharing. Any questions on the application process?
Yes, I did see, we have someone who's filled out the application and completed the online course, and she's wondering what's next. Is it the test? How does she get notified for that?
All right, so okay, so you can, okay, I was looking at the questions in the chat. Ask me that question again.
Yeah, she direct messaged me. She said she's filled out an application and completed the online course, and she's wondering what comes after that. Is she be notified or?
Absolutely. So after you do the online course, 9 modules, and several of the exam questions come from that online course. So you want to do it and you want to take notes when you do it. She's going to be notified by the healthcare authority whether or not they accepted her application. And then she's going to be notified within that letter that a training agency will get a hold of her within the next 60 days. And so if within the next 60 days, a training agency doesn't get a hold of her, then she needs to recontact the healthcare authority and just kind of light a fire under them. Mm-hmm. This is definitely the case of a squeaky wheel gets heard. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to look at a couple of these.
Okay, go ahead.
So the private training can be given in Spanish, and I have several fantastic Spanish speaking trainers that we can pay to train. I've gotten so many requests for Spanish speaking CPC trainings in the last 6 months. It's not even funny. So here's a question. If you're not comfortable with sharing your story, then are you not considered, or is there training support to improve that skill? That is a great question. We do have some trainings on how to tell your story. They're kind of few and far between. Our agency puts them on. But you do need to become pretty comfortable with sharing your story. Now, we don't ask you to share all the gory details of your story. Like, you don't have to get into the nitty gritty. We don't want certified peer counselors in the field triggering people with their story. You can really just say, I identify with the feeling of being houseless. And, but it's very important that you become comfortable telling parts of your story at least. I hope that answered your question. And you don't need to renew it periodically. Interestingly enough, once you become certified and licensed, the certification lasts a lifetime. The license needs to be renewed every year, just like every other behavioral health license. And that licensure is through the Department of Health. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. All right. So now we just did the application. Follow the directions very carefully. You'll be given a priority, and that's how you qualify for the trainings. The online prerequisite course is very cool. The Healthcare Authority has a new learning management system where they have the online certified peer counseling training, but they also have several other continuing education courses that are very lovely. You're going to want to save your letter. The one thing that the training agency is going to need from you is a copy of your letter that approves you to be in the training. Also, when you get your peer support certificate at the end of the training, you're going to want to save that as well. And here's the application follow-up. Applications which are incomplete, will be returned, but it might take them a while to return it. Excuse me. And at any time, if your application isn't approved, you could say, hey, what part of that didn't pass the muster, right? And then you can go back and redo your application and resubmit it. Once approved, you're going to receive that acceptance letter. And so that's what you're waiting for, the last question. So if you put in your application and you did the prerequisite and you sent in your certificate, you're on the waiting list and you're waiting for the acceptance letter. So the trainings are currently offered in person or Zoom, and it's basically 36-hour, not a 40-hour training. Online trainings are half days spread over 2 weeks, and in person are full 5 days. Sometimes there's food at the trainings and sometimes it's brown bag depending on the budget of the training. But the trainings are really fun, interactive. The people who I've talked to after going through the trainings report really profound life experiences. Like, we really dive deep into privilege. We dive deep into trauma-informed care and post-traumatic growth. We talk about vicarious trauma. We talk about secondary trauma. We talk about being successful in the field. We talk about ethics and boundaries. Let's see here. So testing. Any questions about the application process or the in-person or online training before we go into the testing? Okay.
Anything yet?
Okay, no problem. That's great. So the test could be offered the last day of the training or on a separate day within the next week. So if you do an in-person training, you're highly likely to get an in-person testing exam. If you do a virtual training, you're probably going to get, for sure, you're going to get a virtual exam. The written exam has 50 questions and they're multiple choice. And the oral exam is pretty interesting. The verbal exam is where you get 7 questions laid face down in front of you, or virtually. The proctor will do that. And then you get to pick 2 questions. You get to read each question. Then you get to see, which question do I think I'm going to answer better? Which one do I know more? You're going to pick the question that you think you have the best answer for. Then you get 5 minutes to write down bullets. Anybody within listening distance, please make sure they write down. They have to write those bullets during those 5 minutes, even if they think they know it, because once you're going to be in front of a 3-person panel, and they're trained not to give you feedback, nonverbal feedback. They're just going to be pretty stoic. And so sometimes people freeze, and it's really good to have those bullets to refer back to. You get 15 minutes to answer the question, and usually people answer it within 10 minutes or less. We encourage people to speak at least 5 to 7 minutes. Okay. And this is operationalizing peer support. This is where I wanted to talk a little bit about agencies. if there's any in program development, we have a program called Operationalizing Peer Support where we can teach you how to become a behavioral health agency. If you're already a behavioral health agency, we can help you add peer support to your license. So we just go through all the nuts and bolts, A to Z, about what it takes to create a sustainable peer support program. And then you might want recovery coaches, you might want certified peer counselors, you might want a mix of community peer support. There's also forensic peer support, which is wonderful, and it's been extremely effective and impactful. Let's see. I think that's it. Any questions? I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, you don't need to. So I'm looking at the comments. Andrea Walker, I trained her 4 years ago. That's awesome. Yay. And do you guys want to see the, the slides will be sent out, right, Brianna?
Well, I can definitely send them out.
Yeah. So now is the time where I can ask, that's the overview, right? That's just the basic overview. But now I can ask, I can answer any questions that you guys might have further. We do all kinds of peer support trainings. We do veterans trainings. I just was training at Muckleshoot this week. So we do tribal trainings. We do active duty military certified peer counseling trainings. And we do first responder. And you could have any kind of, like this group, it would be so cool if we did a housing peer support one, right? Where the resources were focused on housing and then we did extra. So depending on the audience that we have, that's how we plan the training, the activities, and the videos, right? So we can tailor any certified peer counseling training to any, it's like 31 flavors kind of, right? It's like we could do an employment CPC training. We could do a housing CPC training. Spanish speaking, like we were talking. Oh, how do you sign up for operationalizing peer support? I'm going to put my information in there again, because I know that it's probably lost. My name is Stephanie Lane. My email is stephanie@peerwd.org. And my phone, 360-951-1900. So I'm not employed in any agency. I have my bachelor's degree in psychology and have a desire to do peer support, but I have to pay the testing fees. No, there's currently, I'm going to do a fee for service. I have permission to charge per person from the healthcare authority to do this, but we have not done that yet. Generally, these trainings are paid for larger agencies. So what we're doing in May, we have a contract with Choice, which is kind of a health insurance company, but they're very interested in the community. And they are paying for an opioid use disorder certified peer counseling training. And so everybody in the audience will have criminal justice involvement and be in recovery from opioids, right? And so, and if you know anybody that fits that, let me know, because we're looking for participants for that. And that's going to be in May. I think that's May 22nd, right around there. Yes, please, on housing, right? It's really impactful. So the trainings, I can't explain to you how deep we go and how much we explore. It's not only preparing people to work in the field, which it does a great job of. It's also preparing people to not take things personally, to examine their biases, implicit and complicit biases, examine power and privilege. We examine, like, again, we take a deep dive into trauma-informed care. And a lot of times, some people at the end of the training, it's actually not a lot of times, but sometimes at the end of the training, people are like, I'm not healed enough to go into this. I need to do a little bit more work, right? And that's also the point of the training, is that we have skill checks. We have 13 skill checks throughout the training. If you don't pass a skill check, you can't pass the class and take the exam. What else do we have? So how do I become a peer support if no one will hire me because I don't have prior experience within the field? Well, that's a good question. Currently, so there's so much need for peer support. I know a lot of agencies that hire peer support specialists that don't have experience in the field. It's your lived experience that counts. And let me tell you, you're a PhD in you. You have a PhD in life, right? Your lived experience is what's getting you to this point of being even eligible to take the training. And so I always tell providers that they don't have any bad habits. So if you haven't been in the field, you don't have any bad habits. You don't, like documentation is hard sometimes if somebody gets into, a certain way of doing it, so they can train you however they want to. So you could spin that like, oh, I don't have any experience, so I'm not going to get hired. Or you can say, hey, you know what? I'm fresh. I'm not burnt out. I don't have any bad habits. I'm here to learn. Hire me. I'd hire that person. Yes, reach out directly to me to participate in operationalizing peer support. Generally, for that training, people, hi Cecilia, I see your hand. Generally, agencies actually pay for that training, and we do agency-wide trainings. But I can for sure send you the PowerPoint on operationalizing peer support. And if I had enough interest, I could do a whole, like on a Friday, I could do, it takes about 3 hours to do the whole training. Cecilia.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you great.
Okay, so I was just actually, before I got, this was put on my calendar, I actually just accepted a role with the Tulalip tribes doing peer support. And I've been in recovery from addiction for over 11 years. And this is something that, this is just me kind of finding my purpose. I don't want a job that feels like a job, because basically my whole life is centered around recovery. I myself have been advocating for my own mental health as of recently. I think I did this backwards, because I was told to fill out my application, which I did yesterday. And now that you've walked me through that, I'm not sure that I filled it out completely correctly, because it's not until I complete this course that I'm doing online right now that I will be able to be in the field. So is that putting me in a lower priority range if I'm not actively, I don't have a caseload until I get certified and then licensed?
Right. So you want to send the certificate. Do you want to do the online training? Generally, you kind of want to do the online training first, get that certificate, take a picture of it or print it out, and then do the application and send them in like on the same day. They'll be able to keep them together better.
Okay.
I would let them know that you have a job at Tulalip, and they'll put you at priority 1.
Okay. The peer support program, the certification prereq course is what I need to do, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I just was curious. I was already starting it, but I think I didn't have this in order. So it was just like, do this, this, and this. So, okay.
That's okay.
That answers. So thank you.
Perfect. You're welcome. Peer support is the best, you guys. It gets people into services quicker. It gets people discharged quicker. People get hope. And and I'm not saying that peer support's the only way. I'm just saying that it's a wonderful partnership with therapists, with clinical teams. We never talk about medication. There's nothing clinical about the role of peer support. We just use our lived experience to help other people walk along their recovery journey. Okay, did I see another hand over here? Simon.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to add on to what you were saying about people without education or anything like that. Um, I currently work with Catholic Community Services doing peer support, and I had zero education other than high school. The only thing that qualified me was I was homeless, lived on the river for 2 years. I was addicted to damn near anything I could get my hands on. And since that point, after recovery, which is in all instances a subjective term because an addiction is only um, so long if you don't have any symptoms or triggers anymore. I mean, I don't consider that as recovery. That's just if there's something there, it's muscle memory, I mean, you get over it over a period of time. um the fact is you don't have to have this education or this and that. The lived experience is just as important, if not even more, because now you have experiences that you can never learn in a class. You got experiences that you can never learn out of a textbook, which puts you ahead of the game on that. And you're going to be able to outreach. I can't tell you how many clients I talk to that are more comfortable talking to me because I can experience or have experienced things that they relate to and that they won't tell their counselors. So this is a very, very important job that we do. And, the amount of people we can touch is crazy. So the fact that, we don't let education scare you away, you already have it if you have the lived experience.
That just gave me goosebumps. Exactly. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Christina just gave you a heart. Perfect. Any other questions? So a few fun facts about certified peer counseling. A certified peer counselor can run a group of up to 12 people. If there's 13 or more people in a group, they have to have their supervisor, either a mental health professional or a substance use disorder professional, be in the same room, and you cannot have more than 24 people in a group. Also, say when we first started peer support in 2005, a lot of the agencies were hiring people that had gone through their programs. And so there was some real concern about, well, they're going to have clinical records and then they're going to have employment records. How are we going to do that? So the law is that anybody who has a peer support specialist on their team who has received services from that agency, their employment records are kept separate from their clinical records, and their clinical records are locked to anybody that's on their employment team. Nobody can go take a peek. And even the supervisor, even if the supervisor is a clinical director, we make sure that those are separate, and the employment records get kept in HR, and the clinical records, of course, get kept where clinical records are kept. You can have up to 4 hours of peer support a day, 5 days a week, if it's medically necessary. And like I said, you can do peer support anywhere: jails, hospitals, the community, behavioral health agencies, housing agencies, employment agencies. Peer support is really growing, and it's a cost-effective way of getting people engaged quickly and getting them their goals met and their needs met and discharged quickly. And then you guys will get the PowerPoint and the resource handout. Don't hesitate to email me. Let's see. Could I get a list? Okay, here's some more. Could I get a list of agencies that hire peer support counselors? I haven't. Where do you live, Teresa? All right. Vancouver. Oh my gosh. Well, that's where you're in the hub of peer support. That's where community voices are born. So you have Exchange in Battleground. They're hiring. I'll send Brianna a list of different agencies. But Catholic Community Services, Comprehensive, Community Voices Are Born, Exchange. You also, in Longview, you've got Core Health. So basically, any behavioral health agency is supposed to provide peer support, and they should be hiring if they have a position open. All right, you guys, if there's nothing else,